In the world's most arid deserts, oases appear like mirages. In regions where nothing grows, where the heat is unbearable, water springs forth and nourishes these islands of green. Oases are like miracles of nature. Mankind has shaped them to achieve the apparently impossible, living in the middle of the desert. But these castles in the sand are at risk of crumbling. Some of them are being abandoned, while others are overexploited. At a time when our world is continually growing warmer, oases could well serve as a source of inspiration. How have the men and women in these little paradises managed to adapt to such extreme temperatures?
The date palm has always been an emblem of the United Arab Emirates. In the past, when the food resources were still rare here, dates were a vital source of nutrition for the Bedouin tribes, who traveled the desert between the dry summer months and the winter season. Dates satisfied their hunger and provided much-needed sugar.
For Abdallah's family, as for many large Bedouin tribes, Liwa Oasis has always been a refuge in the middle of the desert. It had shade, a few fruit trees, and most importantly, water just below the surface. A string of natural shelters radically altered by man over several decades.
The palms on this plot were planted by my grandfather. This is the parcel where it all began just over 40 years ago. He planted all these palms with his own hands. Then other people arrived and started planting too. And that's how the palm groves spread. They mainly worked the plantations in winter because it was very strenuous work and the summer heat was oppressive. So they would return to the coast for the pearl harvest. They worked as pearl divers. With the money they earned, they were able to develop their plantations and provide for their families. I know this landscape, these palm groves, like the back of my hand, and yet they still fill me with wonder. They tell me the story of my family. Everyone has moved to Abu Dhabi now, but our roots are here. My family made a living growing vegetables and dates, and that is how it grew.
3 generations to create, bit by bit, this 70-kilometer-long mosaic of trees and sand. Situated in the southeast of the Arabian Peninsula, the palm groves of Liwa extend in an arc 100 kilometers from the city of Abu Dhabi, the capital of the United Arab Emirates. The oasis extracts groundwater beneath the world's largest sand sea. A desert called the Rub al-Khali, the empty quarter, even though it has always accommodated a few inhabitants, permanent residents, or passing travelers. The oil boom of the 1970s had a profound effect on traditional society and made the Emirate of Abu Dhabi rich, but the region remains one of the most arid in the world. For farmers, engineers and scientists alike, it is more important than ever to preserve blue gold in the land of black gold.
I reckon this, the nest I told you about, it's not far from here.
The nest?
Yeah.
I was thinking about it. It could be, I think, three things. It could either be an eagle, or it could be a desert raven. It's a big crow.
No.
Not one of them?
It was huge. It was huge.
It's probably golden eagle then. If it's that big, it has to be an eagle.
Does it breed here?
They are known to breed in this area, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Robert Gubiani and Omar Al-Kabi are zoologists. On behalf of Abu Dhabi's Environment Agency, they are developing an inventory of the animal species that roam the desert around the oasis.
It's the empty quarter known to us here, or it consists mainly of mega dune habitat and sabkha, and is very sparse in vegetation. So a lot of these dunes are very, very old, and they only move a few meters every year at the top, but they kind of layer up. It's almost like you can see the wind shaping it, each dune. And although they're hard to drive up, they're wonderful for animal tracks because they come up so clearly, especially in the morning.
To study the often timid creatures, Robert and Omar stick to the sabkhas, these small plains rimmed with vegetation, sometimes found at the foot of dunes, between the desert and the palm groves of Liwa. Here, a few hardy plants sink their roots. Clouds and morning mist deposit moisture, and life emerges discreetly from the bare sand. This is why Robert and Omar hide their camera traps here. They check their haul of photos regularly, and sometimes find a few surprises too.
Anything interesting?
There's fox. Red fox. Gazelle. Oryx.
Ooh.
Oryx in it.
Nice.
What's that?
You reckon it's a rupel?
Nah, it's red. It's too tall. Fluffy fox.
Check the time.
2 o'clock in the afternoon.
It's strange, isn't it?
Must be hungry. It's funny he's out during the day. Right. The reason we put it here is because it's kind of a dip between all the sand dunes. So it's got lots of vegetation. There's food in the sense of birds and rodents and gerbils and jerds. So the predators are going to come down here looking for food. So it's kind of like we use it as an investigation tool to assess habitat quality and what's coming here. If there's no foxes, that means there's no gerbils. If there's no gerbils, it means the habitat isn't very good quality.
At first glance, the sabkha margins appear to be sparse savanna, like that of his native Australia. But Robert Gubiani knows that the Arabian red foxes, wildcats and sand foxes feast here when the sun goes down. For the mammals, each shrub and thicket is a well-stocked larder on the edge of the empty quarter. Because beyond the fringes of the oasis, another world unfurls, almost another planet. A planet where the temperature can soar to 60 degrees Celsius on summer days, and where it takes expert hands to unearth the odd form of life.
This is a reptile. It's commonly known as a sandfish. Of the 2 species in the UAE, this one's more colourful. It has the orange and the yellow. And you see he's very slippery, like an eel almost. But this species is quite common in the Liwa region. As you can see, it's got a very long nose and completely smooth scales. smoother than that of a snake. It's thin, it's elongated, its feet have got forks on them so it can dig through the sand quicker. So they'll be after the ants on the sand dunes or any moth larvae or even moths that are on the common plants here. And they'll generally only be feeding at the hottest time of the day when they get the most heat and they can be the most active. At night time, they'll burrow down to avoid being hunted. So you see them from afar, but you generally never see them this close. So we're very fortunate today.
Running and diving into sand, the sandfish has developed a way to enjoy the desert sun and escape predators. But not everyone possesses its remarkable adaptability. Until the mid-20th century, people carefully avoided the Rub al-Khali. Only a few Bedouin tribes travel through Liwa and its pockets of life, which owe their existence to groundwater.
Nomadic tribes that are always on the move. They will usually be going either from oasis to oasis or trying to reach destinations by which they could either over summer or over winter settle as the weather was getting extreme.
An influential advisor at the Ministry for the Environment, Sheikh Majid bin Sultan al-Qassini, always speaks movingly of this not-so-distant past, when his people's survival depended to a great extent on hunting and gathering.
I remember asking my grandmother, who's still alive, who was saying and telling me about what they used to eat. And it was very simple at that time because it was all they could have. So they would, in the morning, have some dates. And typical of this region that you used to have locust swarms. And in the season of the locusts, they would set out camps in the desert to be able to capture them, and these are roasted and eaten. And there they would either have, in the oasis or in the location that they were, certain plants and certain animals that they could hunt. And that nomadic lifestyle was very much about living in harmony with the environment. Without it, you wouldn't survive.
Adapted to the constraints of aridity, the nomadic way of life did without agriculture for millennia. No need to put down roots in the desert when you have to move on anyway.
The camel really was the backbone of nomadism. It was both vehicle and provider. You used to be able to move your whole settlement, your whole tribe, with a caravan of camels. And for those that weren't moving so far, they would use camels to make sure they also got camel milk. That was very sort of vital to the nutrients you were getting, as well as deal with the harsh weather, survive on very limited water resources. So it was really built into the ecosystem.
Today, though, the camels look glum. In the 1970s, their nomadic masters became sedentary. Villages and hamlets sprung up on the former encampments, but the majority of the population gradually moved to the cities on the coast. Just 10% of Emiratis now inhabit the oases in the country's interior. Although they no longer live with their herds, the Bedouin remain deeply attached to their former travelling companions. A purely sentimental attachment? Not exactly. In the United Arab Emirates, a race camel costs as much as a luxury car. This probably explains the intense excitement every weekend at the country's camel racetracks.